All right, Carrie, finish chewing. That was the fastest lunch I think I've seen anyone ever eat in 30 seconds.
Yes, it's amazing what I can do under pressure.
Well, welcome to another Workshop Wednesday. I'm Dan DeLong, here with, of course, as always,
Oh,
Carrie.
Carrie, Kahn, mine goes, oops. Seems like one of your streams is having a connection problem. So I got tangled up in that.
Oh, okay.
Not me.
And then we're also joined by our orange guest, Travis.
Aren't you glad he's here?
So, so yes, we are continuing our series in sales tax fundamentals. I know it's very
The most
exciting.
exciting topic. We make it fun. We put the
Right.
fun in sales tax.
We'll try. We'll do our best.
So last week we talked about Nexus, and Nexus is all about determining whether or not you are subject to even filing sales tax. And so today, we kind of left off and talking about in terms of sales tax. There's really three, potentially four. So the fourth one is kind of the why of the vowels sometimes, right? But there's really three or four things that fall into needing to understand, and we wanted to kind of unpack those. So the what you sell, who you sell it to, and where you sell it. And then the sometimes is when when you sell it, because there may be some date driven action here. So we'll kind of unpack all of those things as we go through these topics. So Travis, since you're our sales tax expert of the three of us,
We're dangerous.
yeah, what is the importance of what it is, knowing what it is that you sell and how that impacts sales tax?
Yeah, great question. So the importance of that is, there's some things like just that fall under that category, tangible personal property or TPP, that are basically just taxable everywhere. So if you have Nexus, it's a taxable sale. As long as your customer is taxable, you need to collect the tax. But there's other things out there, right, that may have varying taxability, or maybe it's just exempt in most states. So, depending on the state you're selling your product or service to, it could be taxable, it could be exempt, right? Like, so some good examples of that are like software, clothing. I think we talked about
Labors, right?
Yep, labor, yeah, service-based businesses are great. That's a great example of that.
So when you say varying taxability, are you talking about that it could the tax rate could vary, or it differs from other products that you sell?
No, what I mean by that is it varies from state to state. So depending on what that product or service is in the state you're shipping it to, or if it's a service, like let's say it's SaaS, wherever your customer's located, it could be taxable, it could be exempt. It just depends on the state, or sometimes the specific jurisdiction.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's taxable
Colorado has
at
the
local level.
jurisdictions.
Yep. Or like Chicago actually is a great example of that. Like in the state of Illinois, SaaS is exempt. But if your customer is in the city limits of Chicago, there's something called Chicago lease tax on SaaS. So there's some of those complexities there. It depends on what that product or service is that you're selling and the state you're selling to. Could be taxable, could be exempt, could be partially taxable. There's some funny rules that some states have as well.
So like if I sell something, right? If I'm selling something, how do what is the be all and end all, I guess, of determining what that is as far as a taxable category? Do I make it up? Is there is there a research? Like in some cases, like this AirPod case, I mean that's a tangible hard good,
that's
right?
probably TPP. Yeah, I have some too. So I mean, if it's something you're managing on your own, right? Like if you're using QuickBooks, you're going to have to maintain that taxability, and you're going to have that knowledge, chances are, a lot of these businesses that I work with don't have a tax department that's researching, hey, how is our product or service taxed in all these states? But I mean, that's basically what you're faced with, right? And maintaining the taxability in your system, in QuickBooks and your e-commerce platform, what have you, you're having to tell your system, okay, these products are taxable or these services are exempt, things like that. The way Avalara does it is a little different. I don't know if you want to get into that yet, Dan, but we, have proprietary tax codes that we maintain. And we know, we've done the research on how these different products or services are taxable in every state, every jurisdiction across North America.
Yeah, so let's talk a little bit about that, and I don't know, do you want to share, or maybe should I share my screen so we can take a look at the...
Yeah, let me drop the link to our public-facing site where you can search for all of our tax codes.
Okay, yeah.
Drop that in the chat.
Okay. We're going to throw that out on our external chat so that anybody who happens to watch this wants to use it as a resource. So let me go ahead and share my screen here, and hopefully let's see. Let's get the right one here. And that's the messy one. So let me just drag this over here. Make it bigger. Okay, so this is the Avalara tax code search. What does that mean?
Yeah, so with us, with our solution, with our tax engine, we need to know what it is that you're selling when it hits our tax engine, right? And so the way we do that is through our tax codes. And we keep all of the content up to date behind those tax codes. So let's say a state all of a sudden says, hey, we're now taxing SaaS. Well, we're maintaining all that behind our tax codes. So, you as a business owner that's, doesn't have a big tax department, doesn't have to constantly research that and, update those things in QuickBooks or, whatever your systems are, right? So, we would help them do a one-time mapping of our tax codes to their item codes, so we know what it is, and we can apply the appropriate tax treatment. So if you look on here, there's most of these categories are stuff that does have varying taxability, like freight. That's a great example. Shipping and handling, right? Like some states actually tax the shipping and handling as well as the goods that you're shipping. Some states don't. Some states it's exempt. If you look in here, we have things like digital products, software, clothing. Clothing's another great example. Some states tax it, some states it's exempt, some states it's partially exempt.
And subscriptions is one. I used to do sales tax a long time ago, and it was just literally, I worked at an IT firm, kind of ended up going into the QuickBooks land, but they sold what do they call them? They sold hardware contracts to, if their equipment went down, they just paid like a prepay, almost like an insurance policy. And there was a whole lot of, is this taxable or not? And I believe over the years it became taxable. And at one point they didn't think it was. So they had to adjust their workflow to catch that.
Now these tax codes that actually are that come up here, those are actually your code, right? As far as Avalara is concerned, it's not like a universal tax code, right?
Yeah, that's right. So these are, it wouldn't be a universal tax code. That wouldn't mean anything to, any state Department of Revenue, right? Those are just our proprietary tax codes. So, we're going to have, our tax code for SaaS, which would be SWO 5000 or something, for as an example, right? And we're constantly maintaining the content, so to Carrie's point, like a subscription or what have you, a state changes their law around that and is now all of a sudden taxing it. Well, if you have AvaTax connected with QuickBooks and you have mapped our proprietary tax codes to your item codes, that's not something that you're having to constantly go in and maintain or do the research. Hey, do I need to update this item to make it taxable or exempt, in this state? Or let's say your Nexus is expanding and you're getting registered and starting to collect in more and more states. And, going into that new state, you don't you may not know how they tax your specific products or services, right? So that's a huge challenge, is, triggering Nexus into new states and going into that uncharted territory, or just the states you're already filing in, laws are changing, right? So
Yeah.
Are you finding when you guys go through an implementation that the customer is a little bit lost and didn't, like my it was actually my parents owned the business. They didn't realize that, oh, this hardware contract is taxable, and freight's taxable. We had to go through and set our whole change our system when we realized it. I can imagine if we'd said, before they retired, hey, let's set up here, that you may have discovered stuff along our implementation that we needed to fix.
yeah, and a lot of times, hey, people might have to change internal processes on how they invoice. Maybe they have a bunch of things that are bundled together, that, there's some products and services where, if they have separate tax treatment, you may have to change that process a little bit and, break some things out.
Yeah.
That brings up a really hot topic for our partners, right, Dan?
Well, I mean, that's probably something that we're going to save for like the last topic of,
Okay.
when we get into some of these,
the most advanced series out of the series.
like
there we go.
The weird, wacky, wild world of sales tax and what it means to like people who bundle their services, because a lot of people will tend to do that. But I'm just using it as an example here. So I chose freight as one of the options, and then it gives you the specifics about that. Like if it's delivery by a company vehicle before the passage of title, wow. Those terms are categories that are coming from tax agencies. Is that right, Travis?
Correct. Yeah. So the reason why we would have different tax codes is because those little details could change the way the taxability of it in a state, right? So, and that's something we work with our customers on. Ultimately, like, we can't select the tax code for you, but that site's intuitive. We have taxability specialist over here where we can, walk folks through that and narrow it down to, okay, it's most likely going to be this tax code that most closely aligns with your service, right? But yeah, that just shows the complexity just on shipping and handling.
With the title and stuff. Yeah.
Right. I mean, but I could see this actually being useful for somebody even not using Avalara, right? Because it could at least give them some kind of guidance as determining, okay, I can look at delivery by company vehicle before passage of title, and then it gives me a little bit more details about that specific type of activity, and I can say, oh, well, that applies to me or it doesn't. And then if I'm not using Avalara, the next step, if I am using Avalara, is I get this little code right here, FR010100, and then I put that into Avalara for the items that are part of that, right?
Yeah.
But at least I have a better understanding as to what it is I actually do sell, and that the activity of me doing that sale, like that particular item itself, might have a different tax implication, and I can take that to wherever I am setting up my sales tax and see if that fits. If it doesn't, well, I know that Avalara can handle that for me. Right. So it's like a win-win, right? Like, it's like, okay, if at least I know, right? At least I know what that taxability might entail. And if I can't set it up in the system that I am using to track my sales tax, I know that there is an option at least available that does, because they have this code associated with it.
Yep, exactly right. And, I would have to venture to guess there's probably a lot of folks out there that just, hey, maybe they just tax everything. Maybe they're selling products like it's tangible personal property that's basically taxable everywhere. And then they're also just taxing the shipping everywhere. Or maybe conversely, there's other businesses that are just assume like, oh, this is a service, so it's exempt everywhere. We don't have to worry about collecting tax on shipping.
It's not that simple as when it comes to labor. I mean, labor versus products when it comes to what you sell. So let's talk a little bit about maybe something that like threshold tax? Like how does that is that based off of what it is that you sell? And like I'm thinking like luxury items that
Yeah,
have like
okay, yeah.
a
That's I
threshold.
was thinking the same thing, Dan. Yeah, so there's a funny rule in New York that is a really good illustration of that, and clothing. So again, right there at the top, we have tax codes for clothing because that's a big one that has varying taxability depending on the state where you're selling that clothing or apparel. But New York has this funny rule, right, where clothing is exempt, right? But then as soon as it hits this threshold of this is all from memory, right? This
I think
is
it's like $110 or something
100,
like that.
$110. Yeah. So 110, once it's over that, it then becomes a luxury item and you
Oh,
have to pay tax on it.
ew.
That's right. Your Air Jordans are not a necessity,
Yeah.
but
I mean,
But my
women's
wife,
shoes
clothes are
are.
not, there's nothing cheap about women's clothes. You get a pair of pants and they're way too pricey. So I'll have to pay sales tax because they charge me too much. You guys don't have to pay as much for your
But,
stuff.
but it's
yeah,
only
for
on
your
the amount that's
$200 pair of
over that,
pants.
right?
Yes.
I mean,
Oh, a portion?
Yeah, yeah. Or if you're my wife, it might be the Louis Vuitton, something like that, which I guess is technically not clothing, but definitely a luxury item.
so so that's another caveat when it comes to what it is that you sell. Boats and things like that. I know in Florida they have a weird type of thing with with those types of things that you sell. But it's also just important to keep that in mind, that when you're considering what it is that you sell or your client sells, if you're assisting a client, to know that sort of thing, because as we talked last week, all of that burden comes back to who, Travis?
Comes back to the seller.
Yeah.
It's on the seller you are basically a warden of the state. I mean, if you have nexus, meaning you have tax liability, it's on the seller to collect it. And I didn't know is never really a good excuse in a sales tax audit.
Only flies so far.
But
Right.
yeah, it sounds like teenagers with their parents. So, we can try it for as long as you can.
Yeah.
You might get one shot at it, and then after that, it's like, yeah, you did.
Yeah.
So this is a great resource, even if you're not using Avalara. But when you are using Avalara, it's super awesome to just go in. You find out you can. I wanted to show one other thing here about it, because like you have different ways to view things. So like if you are coming in here, going into clothing, and choosing accessories, you can view them by the recommended groupings, right? So that's this sewing supplies. Okay, that doesn't apply to me. Or clothing and related products for sports and recreational. Okay, so then it starts to group those things, so it helps you guide towards what that tax code might actually be. So here's all of those things for sports and recreational equipment. All of those potentially could have different tax implications depending on where you sell it, right? So, but this gives you the category of what that actually is. You can then take that, superimpose it over your wherever you are setting up your sales tax, see if it aligns, and if it doesn't, then you have Avalara to help out if need be, because it can take it to the next level.
This has already made me dizzy, so I know I would want help.
Yeah, Carrie's just got the nope. not gonna venture in there, because you certainly don't want to be
I would always guess wrong.
on the short end of a tax notice, and it certainly could get you into hot water if it comes to that.
Yep,
for sure.
Okay, so I think that's a pretty good a good workshop on talking about what it is that you do sell. We'll talk again more as we go next week into who you sell it to, because that's going to have a bearing as whether it's taxable or not. Please be sure to follow us on YouTube or Facebook, wherever you happen to be seeing, so that you can get alerts when we have our next workshop Wednesday, which will be on Wednesday at the same time. But you can get reminded and join us. So I appreciate you joining us here today. Travis, always good to see you. And Carrie, always a pleasure.
Yes, and I'll make one more shout out too. If you are interested in Avalara, you want to connect up with Travis through us so that you get the better experience and the all of our discounts that we get. It's a better experience because Avalara is huge, just like Intuit, just like ADP. So we have our special peeps that can get you rolling in the right direction.
How many employees are there at Avalara? I heard thousands. Is that?
It's a lot. Yeah, we're probably trending in that direction, So I think low in thousands, not
It
800-900.
it used to just be small back in the day.
Yeah, it used to be on Bainbridge Island. They're close to Seattle. Now we're gotten a little bit bigger since then. So
fun fact, I'm on the council and got to see your building. It's super cool, huge.
Yeah, right next to the Seahawks Stadium. Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, across from Seahawks Stadium. It was very neat,
Yep.
very good, fun trip.
All right, so we'll see you next time on another Workshop Wednesday, and hope you all have a great week.
Deal. Thanks, guys.